shenanigans, truth, lies, shenanigans, truth, lies, shenanigans, truth, lies, shenanigans, truth.
Hey, I'm Nio Nyx. Welcome to another episode of the Truth, Lies, Shenanigans podcast. Today, we've got a deep episode on grief and loss. My co-host today is the lovely Gianni Storm and the rock star Rob B Rok. This is part 2 of our episode on grief. Be sure to check out part 1, the previous episode, The Price for Love. At the end of part 1, Rob B had just revealed that his brother had taken his own life, and then Gianni shared that her mother had done the same. We'll pick up right where we left off. So I haven't really dealt with someone taking their own life, and I can't imagine being on the other side, someone kind of left behind, how that must feel. I've heard how it can feel, but it's hard for me to actually imagine it. And I'm curious how much guilt or, what you could have done and how much that plays a role, or just curious if your own feelings about yourself play a role in.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. With it, you do think that it could be prevented by your hands somehow. Yeah, I think because we don't want to be helpless as humans. So it's like, what could I have done? Even though I was nowhere near her at that time, and it literally was impossible, but it was just, you think, okay, well, I had a conversation before. Maybe I could have said something, or maybe I could have done something. Everybody does feel a sense of responsibility when somebody unalives themselves. It's hard. I don't know. I can't speak for how other people pass away, but that passing away by that and leaving a family member, that shit
Mhm.
is tragic. Like, I'm gonna be honest. You pass away, but then people with you, in a sense, pass away because you're like, damn, you couldn't tell me?
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't do anything. So I don't know. It's like a double whammy. But that's just my opinion because I've never lost anybody any other way. So,
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Self-questioning is absolutely natural.
I want to clarify.
yeah.
So you said you've never lost anybody any other way?
Right. Because my grandfather actually drank himself intentionally to death.
Mm.
Wow. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's very natural to ask yourself those questions. Could I have done something different? What if I had done this? That's just a natural part of the process. And over time, you come to realize there's nothing you could have done, that this person did have a
Yeah.
disease, that they were depressed, they were mentally ill at that
Yeah.
time, that this was the darkest time of their life. And you wish that you could have been there for them. But they weren't looking for help at that time. They were looking for a way out, to end the suffering, whatever they were going through. So
Yeah.
it's very tragic in that sense. And I guess if I to make a crude analogy, I guess losing someone that's close to you is like a freight train crashing through your life. Having someone auto delete is like taking a tornado full of freight trains and running it through your life. Um,
Yeah.
the after
Worse.
effects are devastating and lasting. They never go away. But I
Yeah.
see this as a wonderful preamble to dip into the next part, just the notion of the 5 stages of grief.
Hmm.
So, according to the model of the 5 stages of grief, or the Kubler-Ross model, those experiencing grief go through 5 emotions:
Yeah.
denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on this model, and do you believe that this model is comprehensive enough? Neo, Johnny and I have been talking for a bit. Let's get you going.
So
Yeah.
I think there are stages to grief. I don't know that they are linear in that sense. Like, those are the exact stages that I've gone through.
Right.
Yeah.
But I understand. I know there's this guy Warden said that you develop tasks for coping. You accept the reality of the loss, work through the pain of grief, adjust to life without the deceased, and find an enduring connection with the deceased while embarking on a new life. And I think that's sort of what I do, except my coping mechanism, I'm like Gianni, I don't I prefer not to talk about it because I just don't want to deal with
Yeah.
feelings. And
Mm.
I'm able to subdue the feelings by changing my course of thoughts. So if I'm thinking about the loss, if I'm thinking about it, all I got to do is think about some other happy thing in my life. I can focus on something else. And,
Right.
embarking on a new life, like he said, yeah, you can find an enduring connection with whatever happened, accept the reality of it. I think I've done all of those things. And I think that's more my approach. So yeah, the stages make sense and there probably are. I don't know how often I've gotten angry after a loss though. Um
Oh, really?
Mm.
yeah, and again,
That's usually my go-to. It just ugh,
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
I,
there.
That's
I
interesting.
I haven't felt much anger like when my grandmother passed away or when I don't feel anger. It's more of a, like I say, form of acceptance of reality. This is reality. This is
So
what
I want to use that
happens.
anger as a segue and just go to Johnny real quick.
Yeah.
So Johnny, with the notion of anger and
Hmm.
faith, have you ever found yourself or people of your flock angry with God for taking away that person from your existence?
Yeah, because we're human. So naturally, yes. I think that it does depend, I will say, Rob, how how long or how strong you are into that faith, because I think that
Okay.
for me, I can only speak for my example, but for me there is that sense of, why God, why would you do this? That's like, are you trying to kill me too? But then
Yeah.
there is, when you have that faith, you know that your understandings of things are not as great as God's. So that's just my own faith, religious aspect of it, because our understanding is our human understanding. You know what I mean? And then there's God's understanding, which you can question. Of course we do. That's natural. That's how we learn and grow. That's the mission of humans, is to ask questions, learn, and do something about it. But
Mhm.
um yeah, I think that anger for me, I wasn't angry with God. I was more angry with my mom, I'm gonna be honest. Because it,
Yeah.
it was like,
That makes sense.
I wasn't angry with God. I could, and it does depend, like, too, how that person died. If that person was a young child and they were allowed to be murdered, or something happened to somebody who was in a car accident, then you can be like, God, why would you could have protected them in that moment. When somebody self deletes, it was a choice whether God was there or not. So it was a little bit easier for me to not be mad at God, but I do, that's a good point though. That's a good point when it comes to that
Mhm.
faith,
I'm thinking back.
religious.
I'm thinking back as I'm listening to Gianni. I'm thinking back retrospectively, and perhaps there were moments where I was angry, and there may have been moments where I was angry. I wasn't necessarily angry with God, but I had this constant feeling that something is just working against me. Something is
Mhm.
just not necessarily
Yeah,
God. I don't know. I don't know what
what it is.
force, but I feel like something was working against me, and I was angry at that because I tend to be a realist and like these things happen. That's just part of life. I mean, of course, not someone taking their own life. That's more of an intentional act, but or
Yeah.
murder,
Mhm.
or murder is another one. But with that being said, the natural course of life itself and the loss behind that, thinking back retrospectively, there have been moments that anger did come up. So,
Yeah.
to your point,
Mhm. For myself, I find the Kubler-Ross model to be outdated.
Okay.
I would
It
agree.
definitely isn't it's not a comprehensive model, because it doesn't really address the anxiety, the loneliness, the helplessness, the numbness that you can feel, and the intensity and range of the emotions that you can feel varies so greatly from person to person and over time. How we grow in our grieving process, because the grief never goes away, you just cope with it differently.
That's a good point. Grief
How do
doesn't go away.
Mhm.
we didn't speak to your coping mechanism though, Rob? What was yours?
Yeah.
Um, my coping mechanism is usually to dip into some self-reflection. I definitely, on my brother's birthday, I tend to pick up his guitar and just go sit up on top of the hill on my property and just play music.
Oh,
Just lose myself in that moment and just be in the moment. Um, I try to be a better person in my community. I've always thought that if someone had been kind to my brother that day, a random act of kindness may have changed his thinking for the day. So I try to bring that act of random kindness whenever I can. I'm human. I'm fallible. I definitely screw that up. I definitely bring some some pain with my forked tongue at times. But
yeah.
generally speaking, I really try hard to just be nice to people, recognizing that it may or may not have an impact on them throughout their day.
Real quick, going back to like the comment that I made about the grief is the price we pay for love. Um,
Hmm.
because it really is, if you're being honest. I mean, it really is. If you love a thing, a person, whatever it is, when it's gone, you feel grief most heavily. That being said, like, is love, because I know a lot of people have this coping mechanism is they'll avoid love, right? They'll avoid
Mm.
making connections as part of a coping mechanism with grief. I mean, is that a viable solution? Because it works. If you avoid
It's not
No.
a healthy
connections, you don't
coping
feel
mechanism
pain.
in the long
Yeah, that's
run.
not
It's
healthy. No.
it's loneliness, the isolation, and that detracts from your quality of life if you get lost in that spiral. Absolutely.
Coping is accepting, or are those two different things? Because I always thought there were two different things. Okay.
They are different things.
They're
Acceptance
different.
is the ideal outcome. Acceptance is the outcome that you want to strive for. Coping is what we do.
To get by.
Like I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
acceptance is more of a part of coping. Like once you've accepted it, then what do you do? Right? You-
Then you
How are
Mm.
you
heal.
dealing with it?
Then
Right?
you transition from grief to healing
Maybe you've accepted it,
once you
but you're still
accept.
repressing your feelings. Maybe you've accepted it, but then you start, like you said, Robbie is healing. There's a whole process to how you're coping with it, right?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The quote that I have here is from Stephen Colbert. Everybody suffers. If you can accept your suffering, then you will understand other people better. Be grateful for pain, love life. So that's the exact opposite of what you were saying there, Neo. People who sever that love, who sever those ties. If you really want to love life, you need to be grateful for everything that
Every
has come in
part.
your life,
Yeah.
the good and the bad. And to be grateful for the bad stuff that happens is a difficult exercise because like I said, with my brother's loss, how it impacted me, it did make me a better person in the long run. Maybe not in the short term after losing
Mm-mm.
him. There's a lot of self-destructive behavior that went along there, but
Yeah.
in the long run I've become a much better person because of that love and that loss. It's a gift to exist, and with existence comes suffering. The more people, the more meaningful connections you have, the more grief and loss you will experience.
I wanted to jump in really quick. Since we're bringing examples, I know we all love Keanu Reeves, the actor. He actually had lost his wife and then his child, or I think it was a child, then his wife. And I wanted to bring him as an example because he was this
Yeah.
kind of like deep, philosophical, cool guy. I just wanted that to be an example in regards to who you are in general, how the personality that you have definitely also impacts how people take loss and grief. Because, like I mentioned before, myself, just being somebody who is very emotional in general, and I'm also private at the same time, me experiencing that grief and loss may have been easier as opposed to somebody who was more dependent on with their emotions, if that makes sense. So Keanu, we even see with his interviews that he's just has a philosophical approach to things. Like he's just a wiser, more private person. He reminds me of like Rob and Neo in a sense. Like he's not super emotional and expressive. So just highlighting that grief is dependent on a person's personality, and it will change you in your aspect of how you deal with emotion.
Yeah.
Was there any stigma surrounding you expressing your emotion? I mean, you identify as Latina, as African, like,
Right.
I mean, any stigmas attached with you expressing your grief, say, versus, I guess, some male counterparts in your family?
Okay. Um, I was much more allowed, I would say that, than as opposed to the men in my family. There is a stigma, I would say, with Black people in general, because we experience so much of it. Like as a collective, I think that as a collective, Black people experience a lot of loss and grief and have to kind of get over it quicker. So, yeah, but personally, no.
Can you
Personally,
explain
no. I
why?
think
Why you think we have to get over it quicker?
because it keeps happening. So it's like one person may pass away, but especially in the past, you would hear, okay, George Floyd passed away, and then Rashad, blah, blah, blah. And then,
Oh, you're
so it was
societal loss.
consistent. Yeah, I'm
Mhm.
talking about as a community now,
Got it.
but individually too, like individual Black people, Black experience. Yeah, your Uncle Pookie died, and then Day Day died, and then you know what I mean. So it's like that loss is common. So you get over it faster, or you don't really have time to be as emotional about it. So therefore, you kind of come across like it didn't affect you as much
And
when it does.
contextually, I have to ask Johnny because you're saying, like, having to get over it and, being strong for others. I don't know
Yeah,
how many people said that to me at my brother's funerary procession. Be strong for your mom and dad. Be strong for your mom and dad. Be strong for your mom
Fuck
and dad.
that.
Dude, I
yeah.
lost my only brother. I lost my only brother. What do you
See,
mean take care of them? Uh, what? Yeah, like they've
I'm
they've got
hanging
each
by a
other, right?
string.
That's amazing. They've got that partnership. I'm what? So I'm just curious how
Yeah.
that played out for you, recognizing that you're the eldest sibling in your family makeup. So was there an expectation for you to be strong and get over it quicker because you had a burden of responsibility, or the burden of responsibility was thrown upon you, was expected of you?
Yeah, I think because, like you said, I was the eldest and my mom and I were very close. So people kind of did expect me to be strong. But they did allow me the grace to break down because they understood because that we were very close. Like that's why it was so shocking too, because me, my mom, and my brother were very, very close. She was a single mom for so long. So it was almost allowed. Normally, under normal circumstances, my family is very much, be strong. For some reason, it's like a matriarchy in my family. Like the women are to take care of the men. Like, be strong, take care of your brother. Brother's 34. He's good. You know what I mean? So, but it was that kind of be strong because the women in my family are known to be strong emotionally and to do that kind of thing. But it didn't affect me. I didn't care. I was like, this is my mom. I'm not even, am I here? Is this real life? Like, it was hard for me to even, like, to
Mhm.
be in reality. Like, I still now, I'm like, is this a dream? For real. It's really
Yeah.
weird. Like, it's
It's only been
weird.
6 years. Yeah, it's still very early on in that type of loss. It's still very early on in that type of loss. It's
It's
been
weird.
21 years. So, reaching the 20-year threshold, I can say I've had enough time to process that I could accept and I'm coping with it well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Neo, for you, as far as stigmas are concerned, I really want to tap into your life experience a little bit more. Specifically, certain losses are less significant, which is something I'm sure people have thrown in your face, given your personal experience. Like when you're talking about, the grief surrounding a miscarriage, and other people might look at you and say, "Well, you never met this individual. You never get this was
The
never
baby.
a thing.
Yeah.
So, get over it." Is that something that you've experienced?
Hmm.
So that's interesting. So I was listening to both of you and talking about like what you've been dealing with and how you kind of been dealing with loss and people around you. And as I was thinking about it, I think I was generally left to fend for myself in terms of
Yeah.
grief. I don't know that anyone told me be strong. I don't recall anyone saying don't cry. I don't recall anyone giving me advice as to how to deal
Mm.
with it. I was kind of left to kind of fend for myself in general. I don't know if
Hmm.
that's a stigma or if that's a factor or if that's a cultural thing. I don't even know.
I would say that that would be more of a cultural thing.
Yeah,
Cultural, yeah.
because it was just like, deal with it. Like,
Expected.
you know, so and so's dead. Okay, we meet up for a funeral and then we give everybody hugs and then we keep it moving. We might talk a little bit about the person and then there was nothing beyond that. Or if we're talking about the miscarriage I've dealt with, I mean, it was all alone. Well, one thing, I couldn't really talk about it with others in general. Not
Hmm.
many people even knew or have known what I've been going through with that. So that's another reason I've kind of been on an island with that. But again, just kind of fending for myself is what I've been having to do.
Yeah.
Uh, this has been a wonderful discussion on a difficult topic. And I think that it's very important that collectively as a species, we engage in these types of conversations because this is a universal factor of life. This is, if you are gifted with long life, then you are absolutely going to suffer loss over time.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about these things in a very open fashion because we're all going to experience it and our experiences will help others along the way. And if we remove the stigma about it, then we talk about it and the acceptance comes that much easier. It's clear that grief is a very personal journey and it's influenced by unique factors. So, does the idea that there are universal methods for healing from grief oversimplify the complexity of individual experiences? Is this truth, lies, or shenanigans, my friends?
This is truth. I think it does oversimplify it. It's very complex. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely
Abs-
oversimplifies it because, and I think each of us really has a different way of dealing with grief. I mean, there's cultural
Yeah.
things, there's stigmas, in my case, I was alone to deal with it. We all have different ways of dealing with grief. We've all developed very different coping mechanisms. I don't think there's any right model, any right solution. I think we kind of
No.
have to do it ourselves. So I don't think there's a one size fits all for truth.
No, if you are experiencing someone who is experiencing grief, actively be present, listen. Those are really the only two pieces of advice that I have. Just be present
Yeah.
and listen to what this individual needs, because sometimes sitting in silence with someone is just what you need. And
Yep.
yeah, thank you so much for your sharing your personal experiences because I know that this is an emotionally challenging topic and I know that
It
it's not something that you like to discuss very openly. So your perspectives are valued and I think that this exercise of talking about it is very important for you as an individual, for us as a collective. And I would encourage you to continue speaking about it and just supporting others.
Yes.
And if you're having a hard time talking about it, maybe seek some professional help to help talk about it because keeping it inside will fester
No
over
bueno.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no bueno.
Good point, Rob.
All right. So thank you, Rob B. That was a very deep conversation. We will be back next week with an all new episode next Tuesday. Be sure to catch our previous podcast episodes on Podz Network, PODZ network.com, or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Don't forget, check out some of our clips on our YouTube channel, TLSShow.com. Thank you, Gianni. Thank you, Rob B. Most importantly, we need to thank you for listening to our shenanigans each and every week. Have a good week, everyone, and be happy. Love each other.
It's the TLS show, coming to you live from the TLS show.
If you or someone you know is in crisis, call or text the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. In Canada, that number is 1-833-456-4566. The Lifeline provides 24-hour confidential support to anyone in crisis or emotional distress. Call 911 in life-threatening situations.